What's up, Green Bay Packers fans? Welcome back, and as always, thank you for joining me. My name is Paul Brettel. Today, we're here to discuss the Packers defense, who's finding its groove right now these last couple of games, but specifically their run defense. I think it's been a big contributor to the success they've had, and the run defense is going to have to play a very, very, very important role in this week's game against the Detroit Lions. But first, hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I do greatly appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. You can find all my work over at ESPNLacrosse.com. Several articles up on this topic right here, along with many others. And for my Wisconsin sports fans out there, Packers, Brewers, Bucks, Badgers radio, download the 105.5 ESPN Lacrosse app. Got your Wisconsin sports radio fix throughout the week, Monday through Friday. Catch me on Sports Lead, 3 to 6, multiple days per week. So like I said, we're going to focus today's conversation on the Green Bay Packers run defense. And coming out of the bye week, Packers played the Chicago Bears, as we all know. And in the days after that performance, Jeff Hafley said, I think what we all saw wasn't up to their standard, right? The performance on the defensive side of the ball, even though they held Chicago to under 20 points, wasn't to their standard. But in these last two games against San Francisco, against Miami, they've had a pretty quick turnaround and done so against some very dynamic running backs, Christian McCaffrey, Devin Achane, and like I said at the start of all this, I think the overall success that the Packers are having defensively, and again, number of factors in play. That's always the case in football. Anytime we are having these conversations here, obviously we're going to focus in on a specific topic or two, but there are always multiple things in play that contribute to any success in football and contribute to any failure. But I think the run game here, or the run defense, I should say, has been a big factor in the Packers' success defensively over these last two games. I mean, Christian McCaffrey, we all know how dynamic he is, his ability to make defenders look silly out there, had 31 yards on 11 carries. San Francisco as an offense had 44 yards rushing at 2.8 yards per attempt. The Miami offense, 39 yards on the ground on 14 carries. Devin Achane averaged only 2 yards per rush on 7 attempts. And Matt LaFleur said after the Miami game, they're playing physical up front, they're setting edges, and they're tackling. And that tackling component was obviously against Christian McCaffrey, very important. Again, very important against Miami. But there's a point of emphasis against that Miami team because outside of just the running game, I mean, you have Tyreek Hill, you have Jalen Waddle. There is a ton of speed on that Miami offense. And so tackling, rallying to the football was a huge point of emphasis for Green Bay going into that game. And they performed quite well in that regard, limiting, for the most part, yards after the catch opportunities, and then what Miami did on the ground. Now, with San Francisco, again, they certainly weren't at full capacity in that game, but we all know McCaffrey has the ability to make defenders look silly. And then Miami, I mean, that offense was rolling. They came into that game averaging 29 points per game over their last 5 with Tua back at quarterback. And again, when it comes to how did the Packers contain McCaffrey, Achane, those rushing offenses, it's a group effort. Really is a group effort when you're able to limit those type of dynamic running backs. Starts in the front and goes all the way to the back end. As LaFleur mentioned, as I'm sure we all see with our eyes, the interior defensive line, really physical right now. I think since the bye week, that group as a whole has shown a new level of physicality and an ability to create a push up the middle. And whether we're talking about a run play, whether we're talking about a passing play, the quickest, the fastest, the best way for an opposing defense to disrupt or really destroy any offensive play is with a quick push up the middle. And I think we're seeing a bit more of a steady presence in that regard from the Packers defensive front, the interior specifically. The defensive ends defending the run well, setting edges, really important element to the defensive end position. I know with that group in particular, and I do it as well, we're focused on, all right, the sacks, the pressures, getting after the quarterback, but a key element to being a defensive end is to set a strong edge so the running back doesn't have the ability to bounce it outside of the tackles, or at least not do so as easily. So again, so your interior defenders, if there's linebackers filling gaps, so those players are then able to make plays on the ball carrier. The linebackers, Quay Walker, Isaiah McDuffie, I mean, Eric Wilson, this group, last two games, is playing at a really high level. We're seeing them fill gaps between the tackles. We're seeing them flow sideline to sideline on those designed runs where Miami, San Francisco are trying to get their ball carriers out to the boundary. I mean, there's been some excellent plays from Quay Walker where he is fighting through blockers, where he's slashing his way through to make those plays at the line of scrimmage or in the backfield. Linebackers playing at a really, really high level right now. And then the secondary, the defensive backs. Again, your job in the run game, start swarming to the ball carrier. Help be there for reinforcements from a tackling perspective. And McKinney talked about it after the Miami game. Again, all that speed that the Dolphins have, you can be positioned correctly against the Chains, the Waddles, going back to San Francisco, Christian McCaffrey. But just because of the speed element that they bring, again, they have that ability to make you miss. So as a secondary member, a cornerback, a safety, you got to be around the ball. You got to be around the line of scrimmage. Again, there's reinforcement. So all of those elements right now are just gelling for the Packers defensively. And I think we're really seeing that in their ability to limit the opponent's rushing offense. And before we dive further into this, I just want to take a step back and go back to Quay Walker in the linebacker position. We saw how he played against the Chicago Bears. It was not a good performance, to say the least. But he bounced back against San Francisco with what Jeff Hafley called his best performance of the season. He did a really, really good job of replicating what he did against San Francisco a few days later against the Miami Dolphins. And when we look back to what's the catalyst behind this play from Quay Walker, Hafley and Quay both said it's the preparation. It's the attention to detail, the focus throughout the week that leads into the games on Sunday. And by Quay's own admission, he goes, he can be an overthinker on the football field. And from a football perspective, or I think just sports in general, right? You don't want to be overthinking when you're out there because that slows you down, right? You just want to see it, boom, react, know what your responsibility is, react to it. And I think the way we're seeing him play right now, confident, fast, physical, I think we can, and obviously they said it, but I think you can obviously point back to the preparation and what's gone into the week that's put Quay in those positions to play that way, right? Whether it's sports or really anything that we do in life. I mean, if we're confident in the work we put in, the preparation, what we're going to do, what we're going to say, whatever it might be, right? You're going to go out there and there's going to be, I guess, less thinking, right? Because you know what you're supposed to do. You're just reacting to it in the moment. And I think that's what we're seeing from Quay Walker right now on the football field. And again, it's that confident, fast, physical play, just decisive, and that speed, that athleticism, that playmaking ability that, again, we've seen glimpses of throughout his career. And what the Packers saw in him when he was at Georgia, when they drafted him in the first round. But I think, again, as we look at Quay Walker's performance the last couple of games, again, he said it, Hafley pointed to it, the preparation. Hafley said he's been a man on a mission leading up into Sunday's games. And again, big thing for Quay, just like still any relatively young player, he's only in year 3, it's building upon these performances, right? So what we saw against San Francisco and Miami becomes closer to the norm rather than the outlier. Because right now, just given his career sample size, those are closer to the outlier. But again, he's trending in the direction, if he can keep building upon this, to where this is who Quay Walker is. And Quay has had a lot on his plate this season. One, again, he's still a relatively young player, and he's making the switch to a new defensive scheme, right? So like all the other members of this Packers defense, they're learning a new system. But Quay's also stepped into being the Mike linebacker. And McKinney talked about this after the Miami game, because during his time with the Giants, there were some games where he was the Mike, where he was the signal caller. And he talked about that's a big, big change to all of a sudden have on your shoulders, to all of a sudden be responsible for. I mean, you're not just spitting out what the defensive play call is. You're the main communicator in the middle of that defense, right? The offense is making adjustments. You're adjusting the defense. You're pointing it out. You're making sure all your guys are aligned. You're making sure that everybody knows what their responsibilities are. And you're doing all that within the 5-10 seconds, whatever it might be, before the ball is snapped. And then you got to go out there and react to whatever's unfolding within the scope of what your responsibilities are, and making sure that everyone's where they're supposed to be. So, and then it starts all over again on the next play. So there's been a transition, I guess is what I want to say, in terms of him coming into this new season with, again, a new defensive scheme and a much bigger, a lot more on his plate in terms of what he's being asked to do. Now, over halfway through the season, again, I think part of that goes back to the confidence, right? In terms of what his role is, what he's being asked to do, and the preparation, again, a key component to the level of play that we're seeing. And lastly, at the linebacker position, Isaiah McDuffie doesn't get a ton of attention, but he is so steady. I mean, if he is your third linebacker, we've seen the flashes from Edgerrin Cooper. We're seeing how Quay's playing these last two games. If Isaiah McDuffie is your third linebacker, you have a pretty good linebacker room, again, because he's got good athleticism. He's known more for his ability to help out in the run game, but he's just assignment sound. Isaiah McDuffie is where he's supposed to be. He gets to where he needs to be as the play unfolds, and he's always around the ball. So linebacker play for the Green Bay Packers, obviously a big part of their run defense success these last couple weeks. And again, the task at hand now, make this closer to the norm rather than the outlier performances. All right, so that's the kind of the key elements, we'll say, in terms of what's getting this defense rolling against the run game. But there's another important factor, a helpful factor, that's really allowed this defense to thrive against the run in recent games, and it's the Green Bay Packers offense. We hear all the time, complementary football. It's what every team is trying to accomplish every single game. Offense, defense, special teams, all firing on all cylinders. And in the last two games, the Packers offense has been providing the defense with a huge boost. They've been jumping out to fast, early, multi-score leads. That is such a help for the defense as a whole and the run defense specifically. I mean, we've heard Matt LaFleur talk about this from the Packers offensive perspective. If they get down multiple scores, kind of like we saw against Minnesota earlier in the season or the previous Detroit matchup, it gets the offense out of its rhythm, right? The game plan that you've put together as a play caller and how you want to execute the game, finding that balance between the run and the passing game, especially for the LaFleur offense, where so many of your passing concepts and what you want to accomplish through the air is built off of what you're doing on the ground. I mean, falling behind early and by several scores, it just disrupts all of that, right? You're not able to fully get into the game plan because to a degree, now you're playing catch up. You're playing from behind, you're trying to get back into the game, and you become a little bit more pass heavy. And then as the game goes on, if you're not making up that scoring deficit, you become more pass heavy, more one-dimensional, to where from the defensive perspective, you're not too concerned about them running the ball. If you go into the second half with a multi-score lead as the third quarter gets going into the middle, the later portion, you start not to have to worry about the run game as much, right? And so now you have the advantage defensively from a play calling standpoint, from just an aggressiveness standpoint in terms of how you're attacking that offense, because they're probably going to pass the ball. They know that, you know that, and then that obviously dictates how you defend the play. So the Packers offense being able to get out to these quick leads has been a big element to the Packers run defense success. Again, one, the opposing offenses just aren't able to rely on the run game as much as they probably want to because they're playing catch up. It gets them out of their offensive game plan that they were coming into this game with. And again, when you're in those predictable passing situations, whether it's because you're playing with a 3-score lead or whether it's because you're stopping the run and now the offense is in 2nd and 10, 3rd and 10, whatever it may be, defense has all the advantage. This is a common topic as we go through these videos, but it's such an important element to offensive success, defensive success. But when you can stop the run or when the offense finds themselves becoming one-dimensional in those obvious passing situations, defense has the advantage. Like we said, they're not worried about you running the ball. Defensive front is pinning their ears back. They're just getting off the ball. They're just going in the backfield. They're getting after the quarterback. They're not worried about reading the blockers. What's the running back and quarterback doing? Is it a running play? Nope. Get off the ball and go. 2nd and long, 3rd and longs. Coverage-wise, you have the advantage. There's only so many routes you can run that go beyond the sticks when you're in a 3rd and 10 situation, right? So massive trickle-down effect to the rest of the defense. And so in these last two games as well, we're seeing more steady quarterback pressure, quarterback sacks from this Packers defense. And this is one of the beautiful things about football. It all goes hand in hand and works together. The Packers run defense is containing the run. Their offense is scoring, putting the opponent in predictable passing situations. Now the pass rush has the advantage. We're seeing more production from the pass rush. So it all goes hand in hand together. Now, big challenge for Green Bay, maintaining this momentum against a very, very dynamic, big play Lions offense as a whole, but their running back duo. Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery. I believe Jahmyr Gibbs is averaging 6 yards per carry on the year. I think that's the second best mark in football behind only Saquon Barkley. David Montgomery is in the 4.5 yards per carry average this year. And both have been among the best at forcing missed tackles. They do it in a different style, right? Jahmyr Gibbs brings the speed. David Montgomery brings more of the physicality, but both very difficult to bring down in their own regards. And what does that lead to? Chunk runs, explosive runs, big plays. And again, each back has also been one of the best at producing those runs of 10 or more yards this season. So that's going to be the big test for this Packers defense this season, going up against that duo who runs behind one of the, or maybe perhaps the best offensive line unit in football. And Lions offense is coming into this game, highest scoring unit in football. And if the Packers are going to find that success against them, again, for a lot of the reasons we mentioned, I think it starts with the run game. Because as we saw the first time around where Gibbs, Montgomery, I think they rushed for 138 yards on 28 carries against this Packers team. I mean, this Lions offense is just a well-oiled machine, right? I mean, they pick up, it's 4, 5, 6 yards on first down. So now, again, you're in second and manageable, a second and short situation. As an offense, you have the advantage. Lions can run the ball in that situation. They can hand it off again. They can utilize play action, which they do more than any team in football. They can run screens, which they're super effective at. They can throw the ball downfield. They can run crossing routes. The playbook is open to them. And for an offense with, one, the number of playmakers that they have, not just at running back, but at receiver, Jared Goff, who's playing at such a high level, the already tall task for a defense of having to contain that unit becomes so much more challenging when the offense is ahead of the sticks and really every play in the playbook is open to them at that point. So as a defense, you got to defend both the run and the pass. That spreads you out. You're on your heels a little bit. All the things that we talked about where in second and third and longs, the defense has the advantage. Well, in second and third and shorts, the script is flipped. Offense has the advantage. And like I said, that first game between the Packers and Lions, just a well-oiled machine, right? You run the ball for 5, 6 yards, you either run it again or utilize play action. You run a crossing routes into that space you've created. You hit those passes, first down, repeat the process as you march your way down the football field. So success for the Packers offense is going to have to start with them containing Gibbs and Montgomery. I don't know that you're going to be able to stop that group, but you have to find a way to contain them so they don't completely take the game over. And lastly, we talked about the importance of complementary football. And I don't know that banking on jumping out to a 10-0, 14-0 lead is something the Packers can do in this one, right? This is likely going to be a hard-fought game, right? Because Lions have the highest scoring offense in football. They have the third best scoring defense in football as well. So that getting out to the early lead, again, not something that you're going to assume or bank on is going to happen just because, again, caliber of opponent that you're up against. You can expect, likely what's going to be a back and forth game. Because again, Packers as a whole, they're in a different spot than what they were the last time these teams met a month ago. Finding their groove on offense, finding their groove on defense, which again starts with their success against the run. So there you have it, my friends. I appreciate, as always, you guys tuning in. Hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. Thank you again for tuning in. You can find me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. You can find all my work over at ESPNLacrosse.com. And until next time, take care.